Hi, this is Bernadette Hunt from Southland Federated Farmers, coming to you from one of our winter crop paddocks to check out whether these new rules around pugging with the new definition of a 5 centimetre threshold helps us to be more compliant. So this paddock's finished. You can see it's absolutely covered in hoof prints, which just highlights how the original definition of any hoof penetration over more than 50% of the paddock wasn't compliant. This just goes to show how that couldn't have possibly worked. The new definition is about hoof penetration of more than 5 centimetres deep. So we're going to have a closer look and see whether we can work with that. As you can see, it's pretty dry really. We've had a pretty good winter and we only had R1s on here, so they're just under a year old, so they haven't made too much damage. So let's have a closer look at some of these hoof prints and see whether they'll meet the new threshold. There's my 5 centimetre mark on the ruler, so that pug is just on the 5 centimetres, so that one would not meet the threshold. That one's even deeper, so that wouldn't meet the threshold either. There's another one that wouldn't, and nor does that one. So it looks from this paddock as though even with the new definition of 5 centimetres, it's going to be pretty hard to comply with not having pugging across more than 50% of your paddock. So now here we are on the paddock that these same cattle are on now. It's over the other side from where we were just looking. So again, we've had a really kind winter. These cattle have not made a mess. You can see the new break that they've been given today. It's not muddy at all. They haven't finished eating it yet. So yeah, very, very kind winter. We have a closer look now at the ground conditions down here. It's damp. It's a bit wetter down the bottom where you're looking now than it is further up the hill. But you can still see the hooves of that animal. That's not mud by Southland definitions at all. Yet this is pugged all over. There are hoof prints everywhere across the surface of this paddock. But down the bottom of the hill here, we don't cultivate the critical source area, so that if there was a wetter winter and there was water running off here, it would get captured in this nice long grass, and as it flows down the hill and out the bottom of the paddock, the sediment would be captured and not run off to the waterway. So here's my 5 centimetre ruler. We're going to go in here and have a closer look at some of these pugs and see whether or not they meet the 5 centimetre rule. So this paddock clearly doesn't meet the 10 centimetre slope definition, so that's another whole ball game. But yeah, and these cattle are on here for quite a few weeks, but they're only little tackers. This is their first winter. You don't really get anything smaller than this on winter crop in the cattle department anyway. Obviously lambs are smaller, but yeah, so these guys are a lot lighter than their big brothers and sisters. Their big brothers and sisters would get closer to 500 or 600 kilos. So these are just wee fellas. If we can't meet the rules with these, then we're absolutely stuffed with bigger cattle. So right, here we are. Let's measure the first of these hoof prints in here. And look at that, way over the 5 centimetre mark. Granted, we're at the bottom of the hill, but we're also in a very, very dry season, and we haven't had any rain of any significance for quite a few days. So if we can't meet this rule now, we're absolutely stuffed. And also bear in mind that we need to apply for these consents before we plant the paddock. So we need to be deciding in August or September, when we would need to apply for a consent, whether or not we're going to be able to comply with that next winter. So somehow we need a crystal ball and we need to figure out what the weather's going to do next winter and whether we're going to be able to comply. But judging by what I've just seen, we're pretty much never going to be able to comply. So we just always need to apply for a consent. Just for argument's sake, now we're having a look at today's break. So they've only been on this section of the paddock for about 6 or 7 hours. You can see they haven't finished eating it all yet. There's barely any mud there at all, but when we look closer at these hoof prints, that looks like it's about 5 centimetres. So even on this dry patch of ground, on a dry, windy day, these animals are making pugs. So clearly this is still unachievable. So just a final message for Minister O'Connor. Thank you very much for recognising that this policy just isn't going to be practical. You commented to Jamie Mackay yesterday that parts of the regulation had overstepped the mark, I think were your words. I 100% agree with you, and I'm stoked that you've recognised that. I'm stoked that you've made some changes. We've always said that rushed policy is poor policy. It looks like rushed changes to rushed policy are also pretty poor changes. I really hope you're going to have another look at this, and feel free to give me a ring if you want some suggestions. Cheers!